speak to try and minimize noise and confusion. Attendees, if there is a public hearing and you wish to speak, please raise your hand and the moderator will unmute you. I think that's about it. So Chris, we can start the meeting. Chris, you're on mute.
Okay, I'm going to call the Village Plan Commission meeting for July 13th to order. Roll call, please.
Chris Zellner.
Here.
Phil Willems.
Here.
Kristen Runge. Brad Zeman.
Here.
Ryan Malish.
Here.
Chris Thomas.
Here.
Brian Wallace.
Here.
Okay.
Okay, first item we have on the agenda for this evening is minutes. Look for a motion for that.
Motion to approve last month's minutes.
Motion by Brad Zeman.
I'll second.
Second by Chris Thomas. Okay, any other comments? Seeing no hands, roll call vote. Tracy?
Chris Zellner.
Yes.
Phil Willems. Brad Zeman.
Yes.
Brian Malish.
Yes.
Chris Thomas.
Yes.
Brian Wallace.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. First item we have is public comment. So with our village board, we changed our public comment section at the last meeting, and we're going to run our public comments the same for our plan commission, which means that people have 2 minutes that they can comment on anything that's either on the agenda or not on the agenda this evening. And if you would like to make a comment, please raise your hand and Tracy will take that comment. Or is it Tracy or Todd that's going to allow them in? I'm not sure which one, but one of you will let them in.
Yeah, I'll be letting folks in, and Tracy, if you want to just monitor the timekeeping on it. So at this point, for those participating, I see there's 6 of you. If you do want to make comments on anything on or not on the agenda for this evening, please raise your virtual hand.
Okay.
No hands, Chris.
Okay, then I'm going to move on then to just make a comment that we did receive 4 emails from Tracy, I believe, and then let me just make sure. Yes, from Tracy to all the commission members. You should have that in your emails, and some of them just came in right before our meeting, so if you haven't had a chance, but there is information for you from some of the residents and giving their opinions and things for different items on the agenda. Okay, next we have under new business, discussion action on proposed annexation of land, approximately 1.2. Am I in the wrong spot here? Sorry guys. Public hearing and discussion action on a request for conditional use permit by Reese Property, 1001 Arboretum Drive, to allow operation of a hair salon within a multi-tenant building in the I-1 zoning district. Kevin?
As introduction, this is a conditional use permit which is required in this multi-tenant building to allow for the hair salon, which is considered an ancillary use in the business park. So with that, Chris, I'd advise you to hold the public hearing, and then we can answer any questions that the staff or the members or the public have.
Okay, then I'm going to open the public hearing. Once again, put your hand up, virtual hand for Todd, and he will let you in.
No hands, Chris.
All right, let's just give it 15 more seconds. Okay, Todd, any hands?
No.
Okay, then I'm going to close the public hearing. I see that Mr. Reese is in the attendees. Is there any other comments, Kevin, that you'd make in regards to this, or any other background information you'd like to provide us?
No, I think it's pretty straightforward. It's a use that would be helpful in the business park, and that's why we made the change to the ordinances probably 10, 15 years ago to allow the small, commercial retail type that are smaller in nature, that are ancillary to the uses in the business park. And I think this is a good example.
Okay. Commission members, if you have a comment or question, please raise your hand. Phil Willems. Come off
You're
of mute,
muted.
Phil. Phil, you're muted right now.
Sorry. Previous to this, we had Salon Savannah out there. And so it's not the first beauty salon that's made an effort. I've been in that building many times. There's varied tenants. There's lots of parking, good transportation. I think it's a good fit.
Okay, is that a motion, Phil?
It is a motion. Please, make a motion, we approve it as presented.
I'll second that.
Okay, a motion by Phil Willems and a second by Brian Wallace. Okay, any other comments or questions for any of the commission members? We lost Brad Zeman's video. There he is. So if you have a question or comment, raise your hand. Brian Wallace.
The only comment is just I know that some of the local residents that are actually going to be participating or being some of the or working in this business because they've been displaced by styles and days. So I think it's all sounds like it's a good opportunity.
Perfect. Okay, any others? Okay, then I will call to votes. Tracy.
Chris Zellner,
Yes.
Bill Willems,
Yes.
Brad Zeman,
Yes.
Brian Malish,
Yes.
Chris Thomas,
Yes.
Brian Wallace.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay, thank you. Next item we have is a public hearing and discussion action on a request for conditional use permit by Occupy Brewing Company, 1131 Unique Drive, to exceed the maximum limit of 45 feet by an additional 8 inches. Kevin, you want to introduce it quick?
Sure. A little bit of background. This site plan has already been approved by the Planning Commission, and it was approved with a cap of 45 feet. And at the time, they weren't sure if they were going to need the additional 8 inches. They were trying to make their project work without getting the CUP, but it's their preference to have the additional 8 inches. And I'm not sure that we would notice it, but our inspectors picked up on it, of course. And we advised them to seek the CUP, and we would be fully supportive at the staff level.
Okay, then I'm going to open up the public hearing. Again, if you'd like to make a comment in regards to this, please raise your hand virtually, and Todd will allow you in.
None yet, Chris.
Okay, give it a few more seconds. Okay, anything, Todd?
Nope.
Okay, then I'm going to close the public hearing. Commission members, any comments, please raise your hand if you have a comment or question. Okay, Brian Wallace.
So Kevin, maybe you can provide a little bit more information. I remember when this did come to us. Am I understanding correctly? When it came, he was already in the process of putting this addition on, if I recall that, before he got final approval.
He may have started the foundation, but I don't think he had started much more than the foundation.
Okay.
And I don't recall exactly, Brian, but I think that's just the way I remember it.
Okay. And what is on the conditional use permit? Is there a fee that comes with this, or what are some of the, after reading through here, what are some of the other applicable things with this?
Brian's on the meeting as well. By conditional use permit, you can go up to, I believe it's 55 feet. And so we've allowed other structures in the business park to go up over the 45 feet. In this case, I think it's about as straightforward as you can get in terms of exceeding the 8 inches. And I think it gives them an opportunity to screen off some of their mechanicals better on the top of the building. And I think it gives them the working room in the working space inside the building that they're seeking with their operations that they're using. Their fees are pretty minimal in terms of getting the CUP. It's the cost of the application, which I think is about $350. And then there's a little time for the village attorney to draft the documents that'll go with the property.
All right, thank you.
Other questions from any of the members? Please raise your hand. Okay, seeing none. Brian Melich.
Yeah, I was just kind of curious, general update, the Octopi site. I've not been out there in quite a while. I know there were, I hate to even call them issues, but maybe screening issues on the backside, general cleanup of property. How's that all gone? Yes.
Yeah, good question, Brian. We continue to work with them. They are planning a couple different expansions. They're currently planning an expansion off the back of the building, which would impact the fence, which is a requirement by the Planning Commission. I allowed them administratively to not put the fence in because their expansion that they're planning would interfere with where the fence is going to go. He has agreed to put up an escrow, a dollar amount that would be tied to it before we give final occupancy. So we get the assurance that the fence will be installed, or we'll have that opportunity to put the fence up ourselves. And then they're also looking at another expansion within the business park on another particular site. So they're growing, and you may have heard, I think even at the last village board meeting, they presented plans to do another building similar in size what they have now on the other side of the street.
Okay, any other
I
questions?
appreciate that.
Any others? Okay, then I would look for a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay, motion by Brad Zeman. Do we have a second? Phil, your
No,
mouth.
second.
Second.
Okay, so I'm going to give it to Phil. His mouth moved, and he might not have been unmuted, but so I'm going to go motion by Brad Zeman, second by Phil Willems. Any other comments? Please raise your hand. Otherwise, call the question. Tracy.
Tracy, you're muted.
There you go.
Sorry. Chris Zellner,
Yes.
Phil Willems,
Yes.
Brad Zeman,
Yes.
Brian Malish,
Yes.
Chris Thomas,
Yes.
Brian Wallace.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay, thank you. Next item we have is discussion action on providing guidance to village staff on repealing section 133.16 restrictions on rezoning for multifamily use in the village zoning code and possible amendments to the comprehensive plan relating to multifamily housing and affordable.
To give the Plan Commission an update, the CDA has made a recommendation to the Plan Commission and Village Board that they consider an amendment to the zoning ordinances, which has a ratio that our single-family homes and the multifamily homes has a ratio of 75% to 25%. And I think as we found out through the CDA and our research that was presented to the CDA, we are one of probably no others that have a similar type of ordinance. Other communities do have some guidelines within their comprehensive plan, but none others have it within their zoning ordinance or within their code of ordinances. So as a recommendation from the CDA, they've recommended that we repeal that particular ordinance And at the staff level, we think it's, and we presented parts of that, this to go along to the CDA, but as part of that, there's some language within our comprehensive plan with regard to some ratios. And there's a pretty good discussion at the CDA. Just as a reminder, you're not taking any formal action on this tonight. This is going to take a formal process to make changes to the ordinances and also the comprehensive plan. The thing that we want to advise you on is that if you're going to make changes to the ordinance, there's still some comprehensive plan language that could be in conflict. So this would be the time to really look at this comprehensively through the comprehensive plan and the ordinances. So with that, I'm gonna, if Jason is available, I'm gonna have him add on to whatever else I added, and we'll queue up Brian to be next.
Yeah, I'm available. Is my audio coming through fine? So I just, I don't want to overdo the explanation of this, but kind of hit some highlights of the memo that I provided that's in the packet. There's a number of reasons listed for that, all of which came up in discussion with CDA about why the logic behind removing this policy from ordinance. And without reading that list verbatim, I would say that it's a mix of it's hard to administer because it's a little bit confusing in interpretation. It's not necessarily good planning practice in that there is no right balance of units. It's getting in the way of having of being able to approve good projects when good projects come forward. And it's probably less important than focusing on good design and working to achieve really good projects wherever they may be. So that's the shortened version of the list of varied reasons for removing the ordinance. The plan has an item that is intended to kind of reinforce that current ordinance, which is kind of interprets it and talks about it at the project level, the 75-25 split versus the entire community level. But it would be good practice to remove that from the plan at the same time, because I think that really would be the intent of removing the ordinance too. And then because we were talking about them, the CDA conversations have gone back and forth between talking about the housing mix issue and talking about the issue of affordability for housing of all types in the village. And so we thought it appropriate, if we're going to be talking about housing policy and housing development guidance in the comp plan, that we kind of be talking about all of it at the same time. So even though the CDA hasn't recommended forward any changes to the comp plan, either to how the housing mix is described or how or affordability, we thought it appropriate to share what those ideas were regarding having some more specific and robust content in the plan regarding different ways that the village could approach affordability. The one other thing I would mention is that language that's in the plan right now regarding the housing mix, there's some suggested replacement language for that. So what we've talked about with the CDA is not simply removing that language, but replacing it with something that would seek a balance of housing throughout the village and within neighborhoods to include a mix of single family and various modes of attached housing. So I don't want to go on more than that until I hear what questions or concerns are, and then we can get into some back and forth.
You're muted, Chris. There you go.
Yep. So let's just go and find out questions that commission members have right off the bat. I'm just going to go around the horn, and if you have questions, great. Chris Thomas?
Why was this ordinance or this put in the comp plan to begin with, the 75-25 ratio?
Let me
defer to
take,
Kevin. Yeah.
I think I can maybe take first shot at this. The ratio in the ordinance has been on the books for some time. It was on the books when I started, so it's been on for at least, I can say 26 or 27 years. So it's been something that the village has maintained for probably 30 plus years. And I'm not exactly sure what the full intent of with the 75-25, other than I think it was predominantly, 30 years ago, Waunakee was considered a predominantly single family structure type of village. And it's something that we haven't really looked at since the last comprehensive plan amendment. And I think we did have a discussion at the comprehensive plan amendment and said, I don't remember, I'm paraphrasing here, and it's really going off of memory from several years ago. It's that it seems to be working okay. That is something that we probably want to look at as we move forward. And I think that's what has been happening, and that's what the charge of the CDA was look at and that's why we had the complete housing task force that went through some and made some recommendations. And this is where it's taking those broad recommendations into actual ways that you would implement it. So this was like the step one in terms of implementing some of those recommendations that came out of that housing task force. And so the CDA continues to work through those, and these are just the actual where the rubber hits the road in terms of how we're going to implement some of the recommendations that have been working their way down.
Okay, any other questions, Chris?
I'm good for now.
Okay. Brad Zeman?
No questions here.
Okay. Brian Malich?
No, I don't think I have any questions right now. Trying to find something in here that I like, I guess. Having a hard time with that one right now. But no questions.
Okay. Brian Wallace?
If I'm reading this correctly about, and maybe this is something that's proposed or was existing with the 75-25% rule here or guideline, it says here under comprehensive plan changes for housing mix that the CDA has discussed a policy where they would maintain that regulation and require new developments to maintain a ratio of 75-25. And it says redevelopment projects and senior housing projects are exempt. So if there's some redevelopment that would be proposed, say downtown or somewhere else, does that get pulled out of that ratio or that requirement? That was one of the questions I had. And then, it's challenging. I know CDA is talking about affordable housing here. It's a little bit challenging to put parameters on what that is from a committee level. You kind of have to assess each project on its own merit to determine what the affordability of that is.
Jason, any comments in regards to that?
So I wasn't sure, Brian, if I followed. I think there was a question in the first part about what the CDA was trying to do. Can you maybe restate the question in the first part of what you said?
Yeah, so the first one, when I'm reading through this here, comprehensive plan change on page, 39 of 46. CDA is discussing policy in the comprehensive plan that sought to maintain the status quo, okay? And they have a bullet point here, 2.5, and I'm assuming this is just something that's for fodder at this point, but trying to understand more about how that, how that's implemented on a per project basis, and or is it, throughout the community on an ongoing basis to maintain those levels? Does that make sense?
Yeah, so that's what's in the plan right now. And it's, as I said, it's kind of a modified version of the current ordinance. And what
So
the CDA is, yeah, so this, what's on the screen now is a suggested alternative that the CDA has talked about.
Okay. But in here, and so you're saying the suggested replacement is with 65 to 80%. So how do we, that's kind of a broad guideline.
Yep.
Want to be specific, or you want to have it open-ended and have each project weighed on its own merits?
So the intent of the suggested language is to, first of all, the language that's in the comp plan right now is project specific, and that's awkward and not practical to administer, because you don't necessarily have projects coming forward with individual projects coming forward with a mix of uses or a mix of types. And so one of the things that change would do is eliminate that project focused language. The intent of the broadness of the range there is to allow for some flexibility. So if you're in a location that's really off at the periphery of the village, that's far from any commercial, that's maybe off in the, especially in the pick your location, but say the Northwest, for there to be a lower percentage of attached units and a higher percentage of single family detached, would be deemed appropriate. And in other locations, if a neighborhood ends up having a higher percentage of attached units, that too would be appropriate. So it allows for some flexibility, but also trying to get the idea across that every neighborhood should have some mix, that we don't want to see neighborhoods be kind of monocultures of just one housing type.
Can I ask why not? Just a little bit of devil's advocate to that one. I guess what's the pushback if someone wants to come in and put it in a neighborhood that is all single family detached units?
So I would say there that it depends on the scale of the neighborhood and how that neighborhood connects to what's around it. So if it's a small plat that is adjacent to an area that does have other housing types, that would, I think we would deem that appropriate. But what we would be seeking to avoid is ending up with large areas that are only single family detached, because that then would be directing other types of housing to elsewhere, and having, that it's an unbalanced neighborhood that I think you want to avoid having just one housing type across a large area.
I guess, Jason, just the one comment on that is over the last 20 years with the growth in Waunakee, that's predominantly what it's been. There's been some more recent projects, but if you look at over the last 20 years, those are kind of the developments. And now I'm taking from that comment that we're going to discourage that moving forward. Is that what this is going to do?
The main point, I think, is to find appropriate locations to integrate into neighborhoods, other housing formats, rather than to take the approach that, well, let's just pick out a couple locations downtown and a corridor here and a corridor there and say, well, that's where any non-single family goes. The point is to distribute housing types into a wider variety of locations. It still needs to be appropriately located. You want your highest density housing to be walkable, to be, I would say, closest to, relatively close to commercial. But I think we're seeking over the long term that neighborhoods be more inclusive of a variety of housing types. That's the intent.
And Brian, and if I could add on to what Jason is saying, is that's been the trend. So the subdivisions that we've seen proposals for in the last 5+ years have all included a multifamily component, a balanced neighborhood. The developments that Don has put together have all included a portion of multifamily. The Kilkenny has some multifamily. Across the street is going to have some multifamily. The Arboretum Village has some multifamily. It's a way of integrating different housing types and different housing costs throughout the neighborhood without creating, pockets of all estate type housing. And I just wanted to show, and we're talking about the 75-25, and we shared this at the CDA, and I'm going to share my screen again. Is that this is not a big change in what we're actually seeing in the marketplace. We have a number of projects that have really been teed up in terms of multifamily projects that want to move forward. There's the 701 West Main Street, which is a tax credit project, which would include some mixture of some workforce housing. The Arboretum Village, the one I mentioned, is that has a proposal of 50 units. The Woodland Crest is more of a commercial development, but that has 150 units. Heritage Hills, recently approved, has about 200 units. And then the Kilkenny West, which we haven't seen yet, but has really been, chalked out for a couple hundred multifamily units on that side, intermixed with some single family. So if we look at the single families that are teed up in that same period, and is the Arboretum Village, Heritage Hills, and Kilkenny West, and you look at that ratio, we're at about somewhere around that 75-25 now. We're actually probably a little bit heavier on the single family over the 75. But if you add in these proposed multifamily projects and the single family projects, we'll be again at about that 75-25 ratio. So I think we're also seeing that the market is really driving this as much as anything else. This is what we're trending towards, that we're having subdivisions that have this mixture of housing in them.
Phil, any comments?
The only comment I have is that I'd like to move slowly on this. I hate to do things like, knee-jerk, because it's the first we've seen of this. I don't mind studying it. I think market-driven is a good word. If you go with say a 60-40 and it doesn't sell out, the answer is you did the wrong thing. If you go with a 60-40 and it sells out, well, you did the right thing. But I really would like to think about this a little bit. I don't mind us moving forward with the study.
Okay, my comments are the CDA did. We had a long two meetings worth of discussions with regards to this topic, and it was pretty much a consensus across the board. I think we had one member that voted against this. But as Jason and Kevin's comments, really this does provide us with a lot more flexibility within what we're trying to accomplish with affordable housing, as well as all of our housing across the board. So I'm right where you are, Phil, that I think it's good for us to start the process. We'll have a lot more community involvement as we go through with this. Obviously, with any kind of change like this, we're going to have public hearings to go along with it. So, I'm in favor of moving it along. Where we end up at the end, nobody knows at this point, but The CDA did put a lot of time in, and we had a lot of information provided to us, which was good, solid information. If you want that information or would like to see it, I'm sure it's available for all of you to look at, any of the information that we received. I'm not sure, Kevin, do we have those recorded for people to watch?
I do. I believe we do.
So they're also available that if you want to watch and hear the discussions that took place, that would probably also be helpful for you. So that's kind of where I'm at right now as far as moving it forward. I think it's a solid approach to what we'd be doing. But you guys, this is the first time you're hearing about it, and we're having a 10-minute discussion here. The CDA took about 3 hours to go through. Every time I see right now, I'm sorry, Jason, your face is right in the center of my screen, and you got this big smile on your face. So and you're obviously happy with what's going on. There you go. So that's it. And our recommended motion is, consensus or motion to authorize staff to proceed with the process. So I'm going to make, Brian, do you have a comment? You just pulled put Kim in as well.
No, I don't have a comment. I apologize.
Okay. I'm going to make the motion to proceed with the process of modifying the ordinance and amending the comprehensive plan with going through the entire process and protocol the way it should proceed. So I'm making that motion. Do I have a second?
I think if you have a committee that works, you should at least listen to them, so I will second that.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any other comments? Please raise your hand. Brian Wallace?
First, just want to thank Jason and Kevin for some of the background information there. You had mentioned that the CDA has some more information. I'm assuming there's more information than what was in our packet here. If that's something could be shared with the committee just for further review. And then also maybe the links, I'm assuming they're on YouTube or whatever were they straight at the village board or at a different level for the CDA meetings?
Todd, is that information you can share?
Brian, can you ask your question again?
Well, two things really is if there's more information from the CDA other than what was in our packet, if that could be shared with the committee for further review, so that when this comes back to us at some point, we have that information available. And then the other thing is if the CDA, Chris mentioned that they met a couple of different times, I'm assuming at the board level or at whatever level that was, if there's links to those videos or whatever that we can watch would be helpful.
Okay. The last question regarding the CDA meeting, the CDA is a separate committee created by the village board. So that's not held with the village board. That's a separate committee. They meet, I forgot, one day a month. Their meetings actually are not recorded. We do Zoom meetings just like this. Occasionally we'll record it in order to make sure we get the minutes accurate if we don't have staff with us, but generally we don't record and archive the recordings. So that similar to all of our, essentially it's just the Plan Commission and Village Board that are recorded and archived as video. But we do have a variety of materials that may have just gone to the CDA that you guys haven't seen yet. I'd be happy to compile those and get you the full batch of materials, many of which were memos from Kevin, Brian, and myself and Jason that we had worked on collectively and presented to the CDA. I'd also be happy if any of you, I staff the CDA, so if any of you would like to contact me separately, I'd be happy to spend as much time as you'd like to talk about the deliberation and the discussion and what questions were had. I think the only clarification, Chris, I'd add, you made mention of there was one vote that did not support the recommendation of the 75-25. I do want to clarify that member followed up with me after the vote in clarifying that the reason he didn't vote for the 75-25 ordinance change is that he felt that the additional aspects of comprehensive plan adjustments needed to accompany the ordinance change, that just the ordinance change alone sort of scratches the surface and doesn't fill in the context. So that was the feedback I got from that one member. So I think that's the extent I wanted to share.
So Todd, you can provide all that information out to the Plan Commission members that we have.
Sure. Yep. We'll work on getting everything out to everyone.
Okay. Brian Malich, I saw your hand was up as well.
Yeah, sorry, not to go back to 2.5 again, but going through my chicken notes here. One of the initial, I guess, comments or maybe reasonings, item A, talked about the ordinance being unclear and whether or not it was a village-wide versus a project-wide. And I'm curious, looking at 2.5 as it's written, and then the 2.5 suggested replacement, it doesn't appear to clean that up at all. If anything, it seems like it's, again, specific to new neighborhoods, which would imply a project level, which I thought I heard was a headache. Am I reading that correct?
Yeah, so I'll tackle that one. You're correct that it doesn't attempt to clean that up. Really, it is getting rid of a specific goal and offering some guidance on a general mix within new development, with the understanding that there is no longer a specific target to be measured and enforced.
Okay, any other members with questions? Raise your hand. Chris Thomas?
So the motion is to proceed with the process of modifying. Can we go into more detail on what that process is?
Sure, Brian Kleinmeyer, why don't you take us through the process?
Sure. And I'm going to also talk a little, I mean, without getting into the substance, there is another item that is next on your agenda that relates to comprehensive plan changes. And so there's a process to amend the comprehensive plan. It would require a recommendation to be made by the Plan Commission. We would most likely have a public hearing at the Plan Commission level. Then comprehensive plan changes go to the village board. You certainly have to have a public hearing at the village board level. I'm going to say something now, but then Kevin's going to have to correct me if I'm wrong. I think at a staff level, we're also contemplating trying to have maybe an additional meeting to try to get more input from the public when it comes to the comprehensive plan changes. But there would be like another meeting before the Plan Commission, at least one, another meeting before the village board, and public hearings as part of that process. The zoning change, where we're recommending to get rid of the zoning ordinance, there is also a public hearing process before the Plan Commission and the village board for that. And because of the schedule that we've at least talked about internally at a staff level, we would effectively be able to address all of these different issues if you wanted us to as part of the same schedule. So there's still a lot more that would need to be done on either just this agenda item or potentially the next agenda item too, and there's still going to be a lot of public process related to that. That being said, I think at a staff level, we do want to move forward with this. There has been a lot of discussion on it. You know, when I say move forward, that doesn't necessarily, we don't know exactly what the changes would be, if any, but we do think that we need to kind of, you know, the rubber's hit the road now. We need to start making some decisions, especially with respect to the relationship between residential development and multifamily development.
Brian Wall?
Not to put you on the spot, Brian or Kevin or Jason, but just, I know Phil talked a little bit about not rushing through this. So if you had to approximate a timeline, what are you thinking? And again, I don't need any, just kind of rough idea.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, there's the potential to get it. I mean, I think we're looking at maybe September or October for taking it to the village board. And that depends on how many meetings you would like to discuss this more at the Plan Commission. I mean, certainly we would come back to the Plan Commission in August, and depending on what the Plan Commission says, then it's potentially going to go to the village board in September, or it may come back to the Plan Commission in September again, and then go to the village board in October. We certainly don't want to rush any decisions. You know, one factor here, I would say that this is not the single factor or the most significant factor, but we have a number of developments that Kevin identified and it's on, you know, page 40 of your packet. We have a number of developments that have proposed multifamily that are kind of waiting for us. And we've put language in annexation agreements or other agreements with these parties where they've acknowledged that they have to wait to see what the village is going to do as it implements the housing study. And you know, that is, these people have been patient and we've been talking to them, but at some point in time, the village needs to be able to provide some guidance to them as to, are we going to keep the 75-25 ratio for multifamily, single family housing? Are we going to change it? Are we going to have no ratio whatsoever? And, you know, I think that's the direction that, you know, I think the Jason's memo goes. It's more of what makes sense, you know, village wide, as opposed to pigeonholing into a particular ratio. But we do need to be able to get back to these property owners, and that's one of the reasons to try to get this wrapped up, at least in some way, shape, or form, by October.
Okay, any others, please raise your hand. Okay, oh, Brian Malich.
So from I guess a back and forth, is that 2 to 3 more opportunities to kind of go back and forth? And I guess I'm only asking because when I'm going through this list, looking at the objectives, we've got 7 suggested policies on there, and the 2.5. I mean, I'm pretty far off the mark in agreement on any of these right now. So in terms of the timeline and the back and forth and finding a happy medium, I think I only heard a couple, maybe 3 opportunities in there.
Well, I do think there'll be, multiple opportunities. And, you know, it may be that the recommendation from the Plan Commission is that, I haven't said much throughout this because I think Kevin and Todd and Jason have covered this. I mean, I will tell you right now that I strongly recommend that we get rid of the ordinance. Now, that does not mean that the village does not have a 75-25 or some type of policy that deals with multifamily, single family ratio. But I agree with Jason's memo where he lists a number of factors where there's a problem with the ordinance. And so no matter where the Plan Commission and Village Board and CDA come out with respect to, are we going to have a ratio? And if we have a ratio, what that ratio is going to be, and to what extent will the comprehensive plan be amended to address affordable housing, however, you know, or workforce housing, however that gets defined. I mean, my recommendation is going to be no matter what, we get rid of the ordinance, because I think there was probably a time when it made a lot of sense to have it, but at this point, we're on an island as a municipality of having this within our ordinances. And even if we want to have this as a policy, we do not need to have it in the code. But all that being said, it may be that the Plan Commission, you know, after you have a chance to think about this more and ask more questions, you may or may not agree with the language that's in the memo.
Chris, can I add on to that?
Yes.
I just want to add on, if Brian and others have that same line of thinking, then maybe we need to slow down this process in terms of having this back on our agenda next month. I mean, it's clear the CDA recommend we move forward with the 75-25 change of the ordinance. Staff is fully supportive of that change because I think there's Brian has laid out some legal reasons why we want to make those changes to the ordinance. But when it comes to the comprehensive plan, and if there's not, if you want to have more discussion before we send it out for public comment and start taking public comment, now's your opportunity to really go through those now prior to us, going through the formal process. So if Brian or others think that you want to have a more clear, suggestions that you want to take out for public comment, now's your chance to hit the pause button and work on some of the policy changes that are being proposed. The other option is what the staff is recommending, is that, we work through some of these, policies and suggestions, and this is what we're suggesting, and you recommend you take to the public and get comment on, and there'll still be an opportunity for you guys to weigh in and make changes to those based on public comment or other thoughts that you may have. So I think there's a little bit of clear direction that we need. If the majority thinks that this is sufficient in order to take this out and take it through the public process, or do you want to bring it back next month and work through some of these policy language before you take it out to the public?
That wouldn't hurt my feelings.
So the CDA has made the recommendations based on all the information that they were provided. As I chair that committee, and Todd is our staff person on there. Jason and Brian have both made their comments that we all received at the CDA. You guys are getting them tonight. A lot of work was done by that CDA, and I'm just trying to stress that to you, that they're really making a strong recommendation to us as to what we should consider doing. I completely agree with all of you that we don't want to rush anything through here. All we're really doing, in my opinion, tonight is moving our process along to look at and consider all of this. We're going to probably modify some things as we go, but we're also going to be receiving quite a bit of public input as we go through this. Jason, Brian, and Kevin, and Todd, Jason, go ahead. I think that's pretty accurate for what I'm stating there.
It is. One thing I'll clarify is the only actual recommendation we've had from the CDA is to repeal that ordinance. The CDA hasn't actually forwarded any particular recommendation on the other stuff. Staff decided to share it with you to begin conversations so that it doesn't just show up later and you're wondering, well, where did this come from? A suggestion I would offer is that maybe you could just go around and have some just initial reactions. And I'm kind of hearing from Brian Malik that there's some negativity about it, but to hear just a little bit more, and then maybe just to have some informal feedback to the CDA to kind of give the CDA just a sense of the pulse of the Plan Commission on how some of these ideas are going to be received if CDA offers a recommendation on a package like this.
So I think what you're suggesting is tonight to do that?
Just maybe some quick hits, just go around and hear initial reactions I think could be helpful, and feel free to overrule me on that. You're meeting your process, but could be helpful to continue the conversation.
So I guess what I'm going to say to that is a lot of them are seeing a lot of this for the first time and hearing about it tonight. So to give an initial reaction, I'm not one that likes to see something, take a glance at it and give a reaction, especially in public, because I may not have all the facts in what I'm looking at. It's just a quick glance, and that could be completely wrong. And I don't want to put any of you in that position to have to state that. So maybe that's our process, is to have everybody have this information. Todd provide them the information from the CDA, all the different information that we received, and then we can have this same discussion next meeting, and then move our process forward from there. Brian Kleinmeyer, is that going to work? I don't want anybody to think we're dragging our feet, especially our developers or any residents, but I think that's probably the route we should take at this point.
I definitely think you can take that route.
Okay, so Kevin's got his hand up.
Yeah, Chris, like you said, the CDA has worked through a number of these suggested policy suggestions. It would likely be helpful for the Plan Commission to go through these one by one, rather than just give an off the cuff comment. So we could schedule this for the next Plan Commission, and we can spend a half an hour going through them one by one and taking questions and answers as we tick these off, and give you a little bit more background, so you understand where we're coming from at a staff level when we're making a recommendation on these policy changes.
Okay, so I'm going to withdraw do we have to take our vote because we have a motion in a second, Brian Kleinmeyer? Can we just withdraw it?
I would say if you want to withdraw it, and if Phil wants to withdraw his second, yes, you can do that.
Okay, so I'm going to withdraw the motion that I made earlier. And Phil, would you want to withdraw as well? Phil is now frozen.
I believe that Phil said at one point after Brian made his comment that would not offend him or something of that nature. So I think, without speaking for Phil, I think he was okay with the idea of maybe bringing this back again in the way that Kevin just identified, and I think the way that you're thinking in withdrawing your motion.
Okay, so then I'm going to suggest, and with all of your approvals, and just say yes to it if you agree, or no if you don't, that we bring this back next time after you've had a chance to review all the information, and we can have a discussion in regards to all of the bullet points there. So, Chris Thomas, are you good with that?
Yes.
Brian Wallace?
Yes, please.
Brian Malich?
Yes.
Brad Zeman?
Yes.
And Phil is missing in action currently. So there's Phil back. Phil, I withdrew my motion, and would you withdraw your second?
I did withdraw it. I guess I
Okay, your connection is not working well. You're frozen again. So I'm just going to let you know that we are pushing this to the next meeting. Please review it, all Plan Commission members. All right, let's move on to our next item. Number 4. Okay, so discussion action on providing guidance to village staff on possible comprehensive plan and zoning changes related to Main Street transitional areas.
something.
Phil, for some reason, we're not getting you.
Thank you.
I'm trying to mute him now, and
doing that
the mute isn't working either. So
Okay, so Kevin, go ahead.
Yeah, in fact, Jason, I don't know if you got the ability to share your screen. He's got an exhibit that he's going to work with. And I did talk to a few residents that live in the downtown today. And I think there's a little bit of anxiety that, staff was proposing some major zoning changes that would have some impacts in the downtown against what they were foreseeing as the downtown area. Jason's going to walk us through this, but really, it's really to start a dialogue on this. We're not going to be taking any action on this. It's going to take a change to the comprehensive plan. I think let me turn it over to Jason, and I'll fill in the gaps or fill it in a little bit of what some conversations I had with some residents that live on this Main Street area.
Okay, go ahead, Jason. Is he still with us?
Yeah, sorry, I had to unmute myself. Am I successfully sharing my screen here?
Yes.
All right, so really what motivated this proposal, the suggestion that we take a closer look at the comp plan and possibly some zoning language too, is the south side of the 200 block of Main Street. So this was where the T-wall project was. The village has been approached by, I think, a couple other interested parties that have been looking at that. And one of the challenges with that block, and I'm going to see if I can move back and forth here, because what I'm showing you on the screen right now is from the comp plan. I also have the zoning. And so that block is both planned and zoned for downtown commercial. So the zoning is C1D. And talking about just that block, one of the challenges for redevelopment is that the C1D zoning requires that there needs to be ground floor commercial on redevelopment. It also allows new construction can be basically right at the street. C1D zoning doesn't require a front setback.
Jason, could I
Yep.
just a quick clarification? When you talk about and you reference just that block, you are referencing between the alley and Main Street, not the portion of the square that includes Second Street.
Correct. Though I would also point out that the T-wall proposal was for the entire block. But when I say what's planned and zoned for downtown commercial, it is definitely only the northern half of the block. From a staff standpoint, certainly from my professional standpoint, what probably makes sense on that north half of the block facing Main Street is if redevelopment were to occur, it would be totally acceptable for that to be residential only. There's been a bunch of new commercial space built downtown, and it's not necessarily viable to keep pushing new commercial space out in both directions from the downtown core. What I don't think it necessarily is the best move to keep building new buildings right at the street. From an urban design standpoint, it'd be nice to have kind of a transition area between the downtown core and Century Ave that feels different than the downtown core. So this is really what motivated the discussion. But then we started looking a little more widely and asking, well, what about these other areas that are the north side of the street in the 200 block west, the 300 block west, even a bit of the 400 block west that are mostly single family detached housing with a mix of, a couple of these have commercial uses in them. Most of them are still residential. And then on the east end, also, there's kind of a similar condition where it's mostly single family detached, but a couple of them have businesses in them. And the question is, well, what if someone comes forward with a redevelopment proposal? I think the 200 block of West Main is the lowest hanging fruit for that. It's, but we could see it in other places. And so the question is both what's appropriate on these lots, on these blocks, and also if redevelopment occurs, what effect does it have on adjacent blocks, either the back half of the block or across the street on the next, so you know, on the south side of 2nd Street or even on the north side of Fairview, what are the kind of cascading effects of redevelopment? And so the way that I've defined these areas is not a firm proposal. It's a suggestion for what we should be thinking about if we're going to take a closer look here, with the intent of providing more guidance on design in the comp plan to how redevelopment would be appropriate, and also perhaps being more specific about which blocks or block faces, by which I mean half a block, really need to be protected in some way. And then making sure that the zoning ordinance is set up and the properties are zoned appropriately to protect what we want to protect and allow what we want to allow. And as an example of that, the north side of the 200 block of West Main it's all single family homes, but it's zoned C1D commercial. So you could get redevelopment right to the back of the sidewalk on that block right now. Same is true at the east end. And so I think we really felt that all of this deserved a closer look. We've seen conflict already with proposals coming forward and anxiety about the effect on the downtown and the character of the community. And so we felt that these are areas that could see redevelopment, and we'd like to have more specific guidance and possibly change the zoning in some ways as well to get outcomes that are community acceptable.
Kevin, any comments from you?
I would just add that I did have some conversations with some residents that live in the downtown and even in the 300 block of Main Street. And I think their concern is, and I concur, is that there's a number of very nice houses that single family houses that are on these edge areas of our downtown. And if there's a way for us to help protect those homes long term by putting in some restrictions, and if there is some redevelopment, that it's done in a way that would be complementary to those existing homes, so that there were, you know, similar height to this, so we don't have anything towering over other types of development, and consistent with the roof lines and other types of things, and setback from setback from the sidewalk as Jason has described, to give it a feel that those existing homes would then the new development and the new development and existing homes would work well together, rather than having a 45-foot apartment building right next to a single family home. That would probably summarize the conversations I had today. Again, we're not taking any action on this. This is just really to start the dialogue in terms of moving this forward. We foresee some changes to the comprehensive plan in order to create some of these protected areas. And then along with that would require some changes to our zoning code in order to accommodate those goals.
So I'll ask our Plan Commission members if you have questions for Jason or Kevin in regards to this. Brad Zeman,
No questions.
Brian Malich,
No, I don't think I have any questions. Other than maybe, the idea of, the ground level commercial apartments above it, I feel like maybe is more of an industry thing and maybe a long time coming, as those spaces really maybe want to be more, I don't know, maybe it's more of a service related use, and how many of those can you really cram into a stretch of Main Street that's so many miles long? I guess I'm curious if there's been any traction, any word from Lamp House, that group, how they're doing, or maybe how they were doing prior to a few months ago in terms of interest for commercial storefront along Main Street.
Kevin, do you have any feedback on that right now?
Not really. I know that there's waiting lists at a number of those apartment complexes, but I don't know how they've been affected by the pandemic.
How about on the commercial side, filling out ground floor of Lamp House on Main Street, that kind of stuff? Any
challenging
traction?
I mean, I think any traction that was there, pre-COVID was, we had some restaurants and others that were interested in moving even along the Q corridor. I don't. Our interest in commercial development in Waunakee is become non-existent throughout.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we're gonna see a lot over the next 6 months for commercial development at the Plan Commission level.
And I would briefly add, Brian, that is part of the thinking in wanting to take a closer look at this. So if you look at the comp plan has Central Business District and West Business District as the planned use across the entire corridor, and it's not probably a realistic assumption that there'd be business uses. Business adaptations of single family homes is encouraged in the plan, but I think we also want to allow for just straight residential in some of these areas.
Yeah.
Brian Wallace?
Okay. Thanks.
I have
Go ahead. You're muted. Brian, any questions?
I have no questions.
Bill Willems?
I have no questions, but I would encourage us to really move slow on this and really a lot of research.
Chris Thomas?
Is this new Main Street transitional district? Is that everything in that black box, or is that just for the commercial area?
So the intent of the black box is just to make sure that we're having a wide enough area of consideration so that we're understanding the kind of secondary and tertiary impacts of redevelopment on, or whatever happens on Main Street. So if there were to be, for example, a new zoning district that would allow for a type of residential development that isn't exactly possible in the code right now, because the multifamily district, the highest density district, has these really deep setback requirements that isn't a fit for Main Street. I think the intent, my guess, is where we would land through the process is that the only place we would indicate that as appropriate is right on Main Street. But the point of the process is to have a conversation to look at not only the half of the block that's on Main Street, but also to consider the impact and what people want for the other side of the block and even the other side of the next street, so that we're talking about it all. But what changes would be made would come out of the process.
Okay, my only comments or questions. and this can be to Kevin or Jason, is there something that's urgent or a developer that's, you know, really putting the pressures to this? Is there residents that are talking about this? We have so many different things happening right now in the community. Is there a reason that we want to focus down into this right now, especially during the pandemic?
I would add, to answer that, we did have some interest in the 200 block. Maybe you could point that out, Jason, with your mouse. And that was, you know, 2-story townhome connected homes, you know, between West Street and 5th Street. And that project's gone away. That there was a, you know, staff discussions probably for about 6 months or so, but that developer has dropped interest in that particular project because of trying to assemble became complicated, and I think the economics didn't necessarily work without some really major investment from the community in order to create you know, market rate housing of that, like 300,000 for you know, for a townhome. That project's gone away. That was, but because of the way the comprehensive the plan is written, because of the zoning ordinance the way it's written, we didn't think that would fit because it would require some first floor commercial. So we thought, in order, if we do want to see that type of development, and I suspect that even with some casual conversations that people in the downtown area, that would be, you know, an acceptable type of housing project in that downtown area, this would be the way to flush that out. But if, and there's nothing pending right now, so I think we can, it's always easier to plan when there's not a developer, you know, kind of waiting for you to make some decisions, you know, on changing plans, is that you get to plan it before the developer comes. So that would add is it's better to plan before the developers are putting pressure on you. That way you get to dictate as a plan commission of when developers come and say we want to do a project here, what's the restraints on it, we could share with them. Well, here's the height restrictions. We can't be more than 2-story. Here's the setback requirement, or here's the density requirements. Because right now, as it is, it's C1D, and if they had some commercial development on the first floor, you know, they could comply with the zoning code, and they could comply with the comp plan, and it may not be something that the village is interested in the community, especially in that downtown area, that particular neighborhood wants to see.
Okay, I'm trying to, I guess I'm just trying to assess if this is something that needs to be taken on right now, or if it's something that we could defer for a little bit here. I don't know how the other plan commission members feel about that, but I mean, I'm not in any rush, you know, to do anything with this right now. I guess in exploring it, I mean, I'm assuming we're spending some dollars in order to do this.
Yeah, estimated cost of $5,500.
So do we have budgeted money for that right now? For this year?
It'd be coming out of our planning budget. Is there funds available? Yes.
Okay. So I guess I'll put it back out to the plan commissioners to see if you want us to proceed with this and give guidance to staff to.
And Jason, can you stop sharing your screen? Then we can see everybody again. Thanks.
Perfect. Thank you. So that's kind of what I'm pushing out to all of you as plan commission members about how you guys feel about this. If you want to look at this, or if we just want to defer it for a little while.
I wouldn't mind thinking about it for a couple of months and, you know, just letting it mellow for a while. It doesn't seem like there's going to be any movement until next year anyway. And it gives us time to really sit back and look at things.
Brian Malich?
Yeah, I think I'd be on board with maybe pushing this one down the road a little bit. I got a feeling the the prior item with the CDA is probably going to be plenty to discuss in the short term.
Brad Zeman?
No hurry with the economy the way it is right now. No developers actively pursuing us. I'd say we just look at this for a couple more months.
Brian Wallace?
I'm in agreement.
Okay. Chris Thomas?
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. So it sounds like maybe we just want to kick this can down the road just a little bit for a couple months and then bring it back. I know that there has been some development interest here. As Kevin pointed out, there may be some others that are interested too. But I think that, you know, as we hear more about that, and I'll be in tune with that, Kevin, and with Todd to hear. And if it's something that we need to push forward a little faster, we can do that. But for right now, I'd say we just look for a couple months down the road. Maybe revisit this in September, October. Okay. Jason, are you frozen or are you just in a statue mode? Okay, there you go. Okay, I wasn't sure if you were frozen or not.
Can I add just one follow-up comment?
Yep, go ahead.
Well, two really. One, I think delaying a little bit probably removes the a risk of issues being conflated. We already saw public comment today, someone who kind of combined this with the other item and in a way that wasn't intended. So it kind of should help to avoid that a bit. The other is I encourage everyone to wander around in both of those areas and think about what you have right now, not only on Main, but behind Main, and think about what could be in the future.
Okay, that sounds good. So we don't need to make any actions tonight, is that correct? Kevin?
Correct.
Okay, then we look at I have to control a dog for a second here. All right, sorry about that. So we can move on from that then, and looks like our only thing for Westport Plan is that it's canceled. So after that, we just need one more motion.
I move we adjourn.
Motion by Phil Mullins.
Second.
Second by Chris Thomas. Call the question.
Chris Zellner,
Yes.
Chris Thomas,
Yes.
Brian Wallace,
Yes.
Brian Malish,
Yes.
Phil Willems,
Yes.
Brad Zeman.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay, thanks everybody. Have a great week.
Thank you. Good night.
Have a good night.